If you've ever had children, or you're thinking about children, you know how important they are. They're the centerpiece to your whole world. And when you bring kids up, you often think, am I doing the right thing here? There's no handbook after all. And so what you do tend to debate ideas with other parents. So let's say one day you send a few messages into this school's WhatsApp group, and then you find out that the head teacher's gone, and you're curious as to know who the next head is going to be. And apparently the normal process that the school would follow hasn't been followed in this instance. And then you get quite curious about that. So you start communicating with the school. And at that point, the school starts to take on a different stance with you. And from that moment on, your relationship with the school deteriorates to the point where the school doesn't want you in the school to pick your child up. And let's say it deteriorates so much that they send some police to your door to arrest you.
It was the morning of Wednesday the 29th of January, about 11:45. I was on a Zoom call for a work project, when on my Zoom screen, in the little window where I saw my own face, I realised that 2 police officers were standing behind me. Another 2 police officers were arresting my partner, Rosalind, in front of Francesca, our 3-year-old daughter. They bundled us into the police cars and took us off to custody at Stevenage Police Station, where we remained for the next 12 hours. He arrested me on suspicion of harassment and malicious communications, and it was to do with a dispute with our daughter's primary school, which began with posts on a WhatsApp group.
So what to make of this? What to think about this gentleman's experience and his partner's experience? I think it's quite a shocking indictment of the state of our country at the moment, particularly under the current government with Starmer and co. But this was also starting to happen under the previous government as well. The police seemingly believing that they have a right to go round to people's houses and question their thoughts. And that's actually the wording used by police in some instances. It was, we're just checking your thinking on this topic. Now, looking at the experiences of this man here, and again his partner, it is worrying, but really we need to move on from the shock and worry of what this means for our society and start to understand what's happening on a deeper level in order to be able to counteract what's happening. There's a very, very specific reason why people often from the left, and you can label them anything that you like, but when you're looking at far left people, we can easily label them as, socialists or people with a woke agenda. We can use that label. And they're always very interested, if you notice, in words. So words are very, very important to this type of ideology. They're not so important to people on the right. We don't really focus on words. We like to use vocabulary and language. But to people on the left, words are extremely important. And why is that? Words are extremely important because if you can change how somebody talks, then you can start to affect how they think. How we speak is very, very closely related to how we think. And so if you can force a person to say a particular word or not say a particular word, then that transfers itself into thought. And so that's one of the reasons why compelled speech is such a bad idea. And it's one of the reasons why I simply refuse to do it. So as an example from that, if somebody will say to me, I wish you to use my preferred pronouns, I'll say to you, you can get lost because I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use my normal speech and I'm going to use your name. And if anything that I say offends you, then I would tell you to suck that up and stop being such a wallflower, because at the end of the day, it's not incumbent on me to change how I think or how I speak in order to make you feel comfortable in what you're doing. Perhaps what you need to do is you need to go away and reassess how you're thinking before you come back to me and ask me to change how I think and how I speak. Now, that all put to bed, and that point laid as a foundation for how I feel about free speech and what I deem to be acceptable. What's happened in this case, the parents have started communicating with the school by email, and the school have decided amongst themselves that this method of communication that the parents are using is a little bit too aggressive. They don't like how the parents are communicating. They don't like the fact that the parents aren't taking no for an answer, and they just generally take umbrage with the fact that the parents have the temerity to contact the school and act in a way that they wanted to act. And so the school then took it upon themselves to contact the police. And then the police, without investigating seemingly anything that went on with the parents, they didn't ask them to visit the station or anything like that. They didn't say, what we want to do here is mediate between the two parties, and what we'd like to do is make sure that everything's going to be okay, and they didn't do that. What they did, they listened to the school, they looked at what the school had provided, and then they decided to arrest the parents in this instance. Inappropriately, I might add, because they didn't press charges. The reason why they didn't press charges was because there was no charge. So, in this instance, the police have wrongfully arrested parents based on the actions of a school. So, really, what we're into here is thought crime. We're into really what is a violation of free speech and somebody's civil liberties, because if you're going to criminalise thought, you're going to stop people thinking, and if you're going to stop people thinking, then there is no freedom of speech. And if you're going to penalise people for thinking and saying the wrong thing or operating in what you deem to be outside the realms of what normal communications might be, then we're into a very, very dangerous time indeed. It goes back to the police. I'm not really coming at it from the slippery slope angle, although it is a slippery slope. You know, if the police are coming round to your house and they're going to arrest you because they don't like how you've communicated, then that's really worrying. For me, even worse than that is the concept of the public's trust in the police. Now, it's something that I've covered in a previous video about the public's relationship with the police force. If the police force are going to continue to do things like this, then what's going to happen? The public are going to lose all trust in the police. And so what we've got here already is police not upholding the law, and instead to kind of manage public order on the streets. They're not really arresting criminals with machetes anymore. What they're doing is they're kind of managing the public order. So what you've got a state here now is where private citizens feel that the police isn't upholding the law. Mixed in with that now, though, we've got another case here where the police are behaving in a highly oppressive manner, policing speech and thought, whilst at the same time not upholding the actual laws of the country. And there's a lot of this going on at the moment. There's the two-tier sentencing that went on last week, and again I've done a video about Mr. Jenrick bringing that to the public's consciousness. That is a real issue. So we've got a number of things going on at the moment. We've got the police not upholding the law. We've got different sentences for people from ethnic minorities, and we've got schools now apparently being given the power to arrest parents. I don't think it's the end of our civilization. I don't. But this is all a continuation of everything else that's happened. Our society in the UK has changed. And I think what's happening is people are coming to terms with that at the moment. I've watched conversations on social media platforms, particularly the X platform, where Americans have expressed their shock. So what you've got is another country in what we can call the Anglosphere looking at the United Kingdom and saying, what's going on there? Last year, when people were being arrested for Facebook posts, A lot of people were looking at the UK at that moment and questioning exactly what was going on. People couldn't believe it was happening. But now we seem to have moved beyond that. We seem to have moved into a new era. And again, just to mention this, because it needs to be understood, this difference in our landscape, we're going to have to accept that the landscape has already changed. And it's not going back to how it was. For me, it's more considering where this is going to end up. What do you get in a society where the police appears to be jumping on thoughts and arresting people at the request of schools, then treating different members of society differently, then giving different prison sentences to different members of society, then not upholding the law with every member of society? In terms of law and order, the UK, of all the countries in the world, has turned down a dangerous path. And I think this is just part of a deeper twist in our civilization as we move towards wherever we're going to. We are moving towards something, and this element of law and order is just one part. This thing that's happening here on many areas, many different fronts, you'll notice things. As an example of that, we now have sectarian politics. And that's just appeared from nowhere. We have people who are now MPs in our country whose main issue seems to be Palestine. And so that's a big change. So now we have faith-based MPs. Now, that didn't happen a few years ago, and now we've got a change in law and order. And I could point to many different areas within our civilization, and particularly the UK, the Anglosphere, the EU, and particularly in England, of all places that this should happen. In England at the moment, we're seeing a particular flashpoint, and I'm sure these different flashpoints will happen in different parts of Western civilization. But it's becoming clear that on many, many different fronts, we are moving at pace towards something else. And we are going to collide on many different areas. And I think within our lifetimes, what we're going to see is a cataclysm happen, where society changes so much as to throw the pieces off the board and they're going to land. And we are going to see something large happening, and I don't know what that thing is, but it's got the look and the feel of everything relentlessly at speed going towards something. And this is just another element of that. This law and order change that we're experiencing here, it's not like you can fight it, because it seems like even when these issues are raised with the police, they just ignore you. You raise this with MPs, they just ignore you. We had an MP raise this in Parliament. You can't have different sentencing reports from people from ethnic minorities. And it was ignored. Keir Starmer went, "Oh yeah, well, we're looking into that, yeah." In 2 or 3 days' time, we have a 2-tier justice system. All of this, it's just another example. And for me, this is a flashpoint, yes, but we need to be worrying about the end point, because whatever that end point is, it's going to be large and it's going to be painful. Anyway, thanks for your time.